One of the most exciting tactics in chess is known as the windmill. Just like the blades of a windmill, this tactic goes around and around, destroying everything in its path. In this position, Mexican Grandmaster Carlos Torre has the white pieces against former world champion Emanuel Lasker. White's rook on g3 is lined up with black's king on the g-file. White would love to open up this rook and attack the g7 pawn with bishop to f6, but notice that black's queen pins the bishop to white's queen on the 5th rank. Grandmaster Torre teaches us that we must look deeper than just the surface of a tactic and plays the incredible bishop to f6. White sacrifices his queen, but knows he will regain it with a winning position using the windmill tactic. After queen takes h5, in rook g7 check, black's king is forced to h8. This is the beginning of the windmill tactic. White could regain the queen with rook to g5, discovering a check on the king, but there is a much stronger move. White played rook takes f7 check. White captures a pawn and discovers the bishop attack against black's king. After king to g8, White's rook returns to g7 with rook g7 check, forcing black's king to move to a discovered attack square with king to h8. As you can see, a windmill tactic can have an endless number of discovered checks. White uses this tactic to gain as much material as possible after rook takes b7 check. Black is forced to play king g8, and the windmill returns with rook g7 check. After king h8, White decides not to capture the a7 pawn because it would open up the a-file for black's rook. Grandmaster Torre regains his queen and ends the windmill tactic with rook g5 check. And after king h7, rook takes h5, black does get to fork White's rook and bishop with king g6. But after rook h3, king takes f6, White plays rook takes h6 check. After Torre's incredible windmill tactic, White is now up 3 pawns. Winning this position was no challenge for a player of Torre's strength. Let's take a look at another example of the windmill. In this position, black appears to be in serious trouble. Not only is black down an incredible amount of material, White is also threatening checkmate on the next move with bishop takes g7. Unfortunately for White, black has the incredible windmill tactic that will destroy most of White's pieces. The windmill attack begins after rook g3 check. The discovered check forces White's king to h2. And after rook g2 check, king h1, black gains another pawn with rook takes g4 check. And after king h2, let's watch the windmill destroy all of White's pieces on the 2nd rank after rook g2 check, king h1, black captures a pawn with rook takes c2 check, and after king g1, rook g2 check, king h1, black now wins a bishop after rook takes b2 check, king g1, rook g2 check, king h1, black wins another pawn with rook takes a2 check, and after king g1, black concludes the windmill tactic with rook takes a1. Black went from what looked like a hopeless position to a completely winning position. Let's take a look at one more example together. In this position, White is currently down a rook, but White's dark-squared bishop and rook on g1 put great pressure on the g7 pawn, directly in front of black's king. Black's queen on h6 does defend that square, so White wants to remove the queen as a defender of g7 and plays the incredible queen h3. This deflection tactic distracts black's queen from its defense of g7. After queen takes h3, in rook g7 check, after king h8, White could play the discovered check rook to g3 to regain the queen immediately, but remember, black was already up a rook, so this wouldn't make the most of the windmill tactic. After rook takes f7 check, and king g8, we see the familiar windmill setup again with rook g7 check and king h8. It is tempting to automatically play rook takes d7, discovered check, and continue the windmill tactic. But now that the pawn on f7 has been captured, do you notice that white's bishop on b3 is pointing at the g8 square? This means that white's rook can end the windmill and deliver a discovered double check, checkmate, with rook g8. Checkmate. White's two bishops and rook work together to deliver a beautiful checkmate to end the game. Now that you've learned the power of the windmill, it's your turn to give it a try.